We are excited to bring you more Grocery Shop original content. Please welcome to the stage Grocery Shop's Vice President of Content, Joe Laszlo.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the afternoon technology main stage here at Grocery Shop. I am here to present a complementary view of the grocery technology landscape to Carrie's awesome perspective from Google's POV. But I have to preface my conversation by saying that although this has been a tremendous past 18 months for the industry from a technology point of view, my pandemic grocery shopping was extremely low technology. I live in Manhattan on the upper West Side. This is the West Side Market at 110th and Broadway. And it's a very low-tech market. There's no scan and go. There's no self-checkout. There is delivery. If you call them and tell them what you want, they'll bring it to you eventually. But so back last March, April of 2020, my approach to grocery shopping when Instacart slots were impossible to get in New York City was I would make a list, and on Sunday morning at 5 a.m., which is when I took this picture, I would go to West Side Market. There's no one else there. I would shop the old-fashioned way. I don't know how West Side manages its supply chains, but the shelves were more or less full. I mean, Lysol, toilet paper, whatnot. But all the staples that I needed were just kind of there. So in a lot of ways, I grocery shopped the old-fashioned way. Like many Americans, I did place my first grocery e-commerce order in the last 18 months, but it was really more last fall, like about a year ago. So while I have had a very low-tech pandemic grocery-wise, the industry has been extremely, extremely different. It's been an 18 months of spending tremendously on technology. Technology, though, to solve specific needs, to deal with huge problems. We need to stand up curbside in 2 weeks. We need new visibility into our supply chains. We need to be much more flexible about planograms. It's been solving these problems one after another as they've arisen without necessarily an opportunity to take a step back and think about the bigger picture, think about the tech stacks that you're all building and the components that you really need to have a technology stack that's going to stand you in good stead for the long term. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. For the next 17 minutes or so, I want to talk about some of the key technologies that are reshaping the grocery landscape. Carrie's perspective sort of came from the consumer in. I want to come from the business side in. I want to kind of focus not on tech by tech by tech, because gosh, that would be boring. I want to focus more on business imperatives, business needs for the grocery and food industries. Or you could sort of think of them as superpowers, right? What are the superpowers that the industry is going to need to thrive and be competitive as the industry continues to change? And I think there are really four superpowers that are the most important for the industry right now. Speed, doing things faster and more efficiently. Sustainability, which is on the minds of every C-suite in the land and more consumers as well. Smarts, taking all of this data that we've all been gathering for years and years and turning it into useful insights that can help drive the business forward. And finally, robotics and automation, but I wanted something with an S sound, so I went with cyborgs instead. This idea that more and more we have things to help move things around, make the industry more efficient. So speed, sustainability, smarts, and cyborgs are the four things I'll be talking about. Let's start with speed and efficiency. So even before COVID came along, grocery shopping was viewed as a chore. There are 1 million listicles online that help consumers grocery shop faster, more efficiently. There's certainly great examples of grocery retailers that have added fun things, on the wine bar in the store, the cooking class, trying to take the choreness out of grocery shopping. But inevitably, for most consumers, they've always wanted to grocery shop faster if they could. That took on new resonance during the pandemic when speed became equivalent with safety, when people didn't want to interact more than they needed to. So Accenture did some research earlier this year where they basically divided the global, they did a global survey of consumers. They divided the global population based on their responses to a question about how much did your life change due to the pandemic. So Accenture has fancy Accenture names for these two groups, but let's just call them the life changers, the people who said that COVID changed their lives dramatically, and the life as usuals, the people that said, the pandemic didn't really change my life very much. They then asked both of these groups, would you change stores to get a store that has new, more convenient, faster delivery options, things like curbside, click and collect, that kind of thing? Unsurprisingly, 57% of the people who say that they had changed, that COVID changed their lives said, yeah, I would change stores for that faster, more convenient delivery. But almost half of the consumers that said COVID didn't change their lives also said, oh my gosh, yeah, I would change stores to get that convenient delivery option. So consumers definitely drive towards convenience, towards speed, towards being able to grocery shop faster. And if you think about the consumer journey, again, you can start to drill down into specific technologies that aid in that speeding up the process. Think about somebody at home planning their shopping trip, planning their shopping list. There are technology solutions that help grocery retailers provide personalization based on diet and preference. There are specialized e-commerce platforms that do some of what Carrie was talking about knowing what kind of milk I like when I type milk into a search engine versus what kind of milk somebody else likes. And then there are, of course, technology that help grocery retailers suggest smart substitutions too. Like if I can't get the product that I want, what's the other product that's going to make me equally happy? Think about when somebody's in the parking lot, and I'm being a little bit loose with parking lot here because it could be a delivery going in your direction as opposed to you driving to the grocery parking lot, but a whole array of mobile technologies that help consumers understand when their grocery order is going to be ready, when it's going to reach them or be ready to pick up. Technologies that in the other direction help the retailer understand when somebody is pulling into that parking lot to pick up their order. And then for people who are shopping in store, things as simple as product locators. Again, Carrie talked a little bit about some of that. Digital couponing, replacing paper, and then all of the array of great technologies that offer frictionless checkout, scan and go, those kinds of things that my West Side Market doesn't offer yet, but may in the future. Again, all with an eye towards speeding the process. One example of this is Kroger. Back in March of 2020, in the early days of the pandemic, Kroger changed a store in Mount Carmel, Ohio to be pickup only. I think that's really interesting, but more interesting to me is that Kroger used this store to test technology that enabled it to install 40 curbside pickup spots in this store to support a 25 times increase in demand for pickup. So this was also big local news when they did it. The store is still pickup only. And I think, from a speed perspective, it helped its click and collect customers click and collect faster. It also took some pressure off the other stores in Kroger's nearby fleet, freeing them up for people who did want to or need to still shop in store. Shifting gears, let's talk a little bit about sustainability. Sustainability has undeniably become more important to consumers during the pandemic. IBM did a global survey of consumers and found that in March of 2021, 55% said sustainability was very or extremely important to them in choosing a brand. It's a 10 percentage point increase from prior to COVID. When we think about sustainability technologies, there are kind of four obvious ones in the grocery world, right? We could all be more energy efficient. We could reduce food waste. We could be more green in our transportation. That could be more efficient routing. It could be electric vehicles, those kinds of things. And we could kind of manage plastic and packaging better. But I think an important thing that often gets overlooked is the data side of sustainability. There are an array of vendors entering the market now that aim to help companies track their ESG, their environmental, societal, and governance management better. Companies like HowGood, Novisto. In some ways, the sustainability problem is a data problem, right? You can't manage what you can't measure. And so all of those kind of mainline sustainability technologies are great, but ESG is also important. I also want to double click really briefly on food waste. Reducing food waste is an increasing industry priority. This is some data from CB Insights, which tracks in company quarterly financial reports how often the phrase food waste appears. It sort of dips a little bit during the pandemic in 2020, but spikes up again this year, saying to me that for companies like we heard from Ahold and many, many others, food waste is a big thing. Food waste sounds like it's one thing, but it's really a number of different things, right? There are an array of solution providers, array of companies, all tackling food waste in slightly different ways. And so for companies that are prioritizing dealing with food waste as part of their ESG plan, again, you have a lot of different options, from rescuing produce, which could be a B2C thing, like Misfits, could also be B2B, like Full Harvest. There are companies that help you optimize ordering so you don't overorder and have food waste that way. There are companies that increase shelf life for perishable goods, companies that help automate repricing or liquidating excess inventory. And then kind of down near the bottom, if you are just kind of stuck with some inventory you need to get rid of, you could donate it to the needy. You could divert it to the landfill and shift it towards things like composting or generating energy. So there are many, many different ways to deal with the food waste problem, and many, many companies that are aiming to help the industry do just that. My last thing, I want to give you a quick example of a company that's making sustainability very central to its value proposition to its customers. This is Picnic. Picnic is based in the Netherlands. They are a e-commerce, online-only supermarket chain. They focus on price and convenience, but really sustainability is also central to their value proposition. They launched in 2015. They currently have a fleet of 1,000 plus little teeny cute electric vehicles that drive around narrow European city streets in 120 cities in the Netherlands and Germany. They have almost $400 million in VC funding, so clearly investors kind of buy this idea that convenience and sustainability don't have to be opposites. And they work around a regularly scheduled delivery model. So you sign up for your delivery slot with Picnic, and you know, like every week on Thursday at 4 o'clock, you'll get your Picnic order. You have up until the night before that to finalize that order. So Picnic knows exactly what it's going to be delivering on any given day. They know what routes they're going to be delivering. And all of that, again, helps them be extremely efficient, extremely low with food waste, extremely efficient with route planning, and their cute little electric vehicles help too. So again, I think sustainability is going to be increasingly important to all of us. There are an increasing number of companies that are taking very innovative approaches to solving that problem. Let's shift and talk about smarts. And again, by smarts, I mean kind of intelligence that helps us make sense of the sea of data that we've all been living with. I think for years and years, you've all kind of heard, it's the data, gather data, collect data, own your data, protect your data. What do you do with all this data, though, right? I think it's a very natural thing to just kind of, wish that you had somebody who could swoop in and kind of deliver you insights on top of all of this sea of data. Just thinking about one particular kind of data, marketing data, yeah, there are plenty of people that are vying to be the superhero that helps you solve the data problem. Unfortunately, you go from drowning in a sea of data to drowning in a sea of MarTech vendors. This is a company called Luma Partners, puts together an industry landscape of the marketing technology vendor picture. It's extremely complicated. It's a little bit hard to navigate. It's a little bit daunting. I think anybody that's thinking about, kind of adding AI or ML or advanced data processing to their mix, should really kind of go back to basics in some ways. And again, I'm going to echo Carrie a little bit, with an old school purchase funnel. I realize there's debates about, like, is it still shaped like a funnel? Is there a purchase funnel at all? But, you kind of think about the steps along the way. And you have, I'm just drawing examples from the companies that presented on our technology track, companies that focus on new types of market research around consumer awareness. You have companies that aim to unlock new marketing opportunities around event-based marketing, around social marketing, around marketing your consumer products in Airbnbs and other vacation rentals. We have companies that really focus on that recipe to list to add to list moment, kind of as consideration becomes intent for the consumer. You have an array of great organizations that aim to help with personalization, making that whole journey, websites and everything much more personalized, relevant to the consumer. Again, I'm echoing Carrie here. And then as people get into the store, you have folks like Friosk and Cooler Screens that kind of are creating new digital advertising and sampling opportunities as intent becomes purchase. You have Eversight, which focuses on pricing and promotions. And then around loyalty, you have folks that aim to facilitate subscriptions. You have folks like Perksy that kind of offer gamified new school market research. And I'm oversimplifying here. A lot of these companies would probably say they play, up and down that purchase funnel. But by and large, I think if you take that purchase funnel first approach, it can help you navigate what can be a very complicated vendor landscape. I have two last points about data. One of them is that we kind of live in this world where every part of the organization has data, and it's all still a little more siloed than it needs to be. Again, I'm based in Manhattan, so I don't think in terms of silos. I think in terms of water towers, and that goes better with kind of data lakes and data clouds. We tend to think of data as being a very liquid thing anyway. Either way, there's a huge opportunity for systems integrators, consultants, and data vendors alike to kind of help you break down these silos, to kind of get all of the data in one place, make it much more usable. And the second thing is, I think a lot of our insights tools are more complicated than they should be too. I read an article with where they quoted a CMO from a major CPG company just a couple of weeks ago who bragged about the 6 dashboards that her organization uses to make sense of all of its different marketing. I think if your marketing dashboards look like the cockpit of the space shuttle, like, you're probably not optimizing for usability. So focus. So I guess my bottom line here is there's another opportunity for a whole class of vendors to try to simplify that creation of insights on top of all of the data that we're all gathering. The last class of technology solution I want to talk about is the automation one, kind of cyborgs, automation and robotics. Whenever somebody like me gives a spiel about like automation and robotics, like there's inevitably a science fiction metaphor involved. If they're worried about automation, if it's going to take everybody's jobs, it's the Terminator. If automation is awesome and your friendly robot companion who's going to do the dirty work for you, it's somebody like Wall-E. But I'm stealing an idea from David Moran, who is one of the co-founders of Eversight here, who says it's not really either of those, it's more Iron Man. And again, this is sort of my cyborg idea. It's not so much about the robots replacing the humans as it is about the robots helping the humans do their jobs better and vice versa. I'm going to digress just a little bit because I think, what we've really seen with e-commerce, not just specific to grocery, but across all of e-commerce over the last 20 years, is really kind of 2 revolutions that get mushed together a little bit. You were moving from moving information around becoming automated to moving things around becoming automated. Let me spend just a minute explaining that. So think about the old Sears Roebuck catalog from the 19th century through the early mid-20th century. Human-centric information. Some person created this catalog. Human-centric moving of things. You kind of mail in your order form, you call in an order, they ship you something. Very human-centric on both sides. There are a few old school examples of machine-centric moving things around. Think like pneumatic tubes or Henry Ford's assembly line. But it's really like in the late 90s, as the World Wide Web became a thing, that we moved information from something that humans had to move around to something that machines could move around. And that was really the first e-commerce revolution. The second one, the more recent one, is when things start moving things around as well. When machines, when robots, autonomous drones, micro-fulfillment centers start moving things on our behalf, I think it really unlocks a whole new set of value for the industry. Why is this happening? Well, it's not so much about replacing people as it is that we can't find enough people to do the jobs we need. This is CB Insights data again, where they looked at news reports mentioning labor shortages monthly from 2016 to the present. There's this huge spike in labor shortages recently that kind of speaks to that great resignation trend several of our speakers have talked about so far at the conference. Couple that with the growth in e-commerce. So the global e-com fulfillment services market is going to almost double over the next 7 years. And at the same time, companies like Amazon, and almost every day there's like a new story about like companies planning to hire tens or hundreds of thousands of more workers. More competition for workers, more e-commerce, and more people quitting their jobs kind of speaks to a need for automation. There's several different venues where we're seeing automation specific to grocery, right? There's in-store bots kind of appearing in aisles and whatnot. There's fulfillment centers where it's really not such a question of will they be automated or not, as much as how much automation is there going to be. And then there's kind of out in the world, and Carrie was talking a little bit about that too, right? Autonomous vehicles, drone deliveries, cute little sidewalk robots. I'll focus mostly on stores and fulfillment centers. With stores, I kind of feel like it's almost the punchline to a joke or a sitcom sometimes, the early stages of robotics in stores. For sure, companies like Schnuck are rolling out robots across their entire store fleets, but a number of other companies that had prominent robotics trials pulled back from them. Still, even though some people may be tempted to write off in-store robots, I think it's very early days. These things are going to evolve tremendously, and if I were a betting person, and it is Vegas, I would bet that we're going to see more robots in stores rather than fewer. Then in terms of fulfillment centers, but my example here is Boxed. This is not new news at all. Back in 2017, Boxed rolled out its own home-built robotic fulfillment system that automated 75% of the jobs in its fulfillment centers. Notably, though, Box didn't fire any of those employees whose jobs were automated. They retrained them. They found new roles for them. And I think that's a fantastic example of a company that is taking the cyborg approach to adding automation. I also think what is new news is Box is now selling this technology to others. They have a deal with a company called Aon based in Malaysia. So my bottom line here is, kind of if you think about the fulfillment side of the business, plenty of amazing vendors to help you automate fulfillment, and I think it's more and more an imperative. A couple of other fun things, right? I think it's always fun to talk about things like how robotics is changing food preparation. You have Chowbotics, which DoorDash bought, which makes salads. You have Piestro, the pizza-making robot. And there's a whole soul-searching moment going on in France right now because you can buy baguettes, freshly baked, from vending machines. And then, again, lest you think I was being completely flippant with my cyborg alliterative approach, there are also companies like Levo, which makes exoskeletons, and Ox, which just won the startup pitch at Groceryshop this year, that makes software that makes wearables, kind of, again, like Carrie was talking about, to help facilitate picking grocery orders or any kind of online orders. So I think we'll see even the humans in fulfillment centers aided by robots, wearable robotic technologies going forward. So I've talked a lot and I've talked very fast. I'm near the end. As I start to wrap up, I think a lot of folks in the industry, a lot of you in the audience may be thinking, wow, it was a crazy 18 months. We got through it. Thank God. I've learned a lot at Groceryshop, but now the pace of change in grocery and food and CPG is just going to go back to normal. There may be things in the new world that do go back to some kind of pre-pandemic normal, but I kind of have bad news for you. Technology change never, ever decelerates. The pace of change that you've all lived through since March of 2020, that's normal. Vendors are going to be moving faster. Vendors will be entering the market faster than ever before. There will be more solutions, newer solutions. Your problems are also going to change faster than they ever have too. So I feel like, what's the metaphor here? It's like a speeding bus out of control. And I bet you're hoping that I have one last superhero animation to kind of solve the problem, stop the bus. Unfortunately, there isn't yet a technology vendor that can manage technology change. There's a potential business model there, I suppose, but I'm unaware of anybody who can really do that. But you know what? There's good news, though. Think of Sandra Bullock in the movie Speed. She didn't ask to drive the bus. She didn't expect to be in the driver's seat. But when the need came, it wasn't Keanu Reeves who stepped into the driver's seat. It was her. She stepped up. She took control. She could handle the bus. She did what was needed. She saved the day. No cape required. No superhero necessary. And I think when it comes to this industry and technology change, you're all in exactly the same place that Sandra Bullock was in Speed. You can save the day too. You can deal with technology. Build frameworks. Think about your business imperatives first. Think about which of those things you prioritize. Is it speed over sustainability? Is it smarts over everything else? And let that help guide you as you talk to all of the vendors in this complicated landscape. I'm confident that you can do it because just like Sandra Bullock in Speed, even without a cape, you're all superheroes too. So thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of Grocery Shop.